Thank you, Justin. As Special Advisor to the Chief Commissioner of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and a dedicated member of the Alliance of Canadians Combating Antisemitism, she is a powerful advocate for justice and human rights. Please join me in welcoming Janice LaForme.
Anine, bonjour, good afternoon. My spouse, Harry, regrets that he's unable to be here, and I'm here in his stead. I think I'm the fourth string, but thank you very much for the warm welcome. The remarks I make represent Harry's views as Anishnaabe who lived as a child on the res at a time when the Indian agent was present and the Indian Act robustly and fully governed his life and the lives of his people. Harry is a proud member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation on whose treaty lands we are gathering today and on whose treaty lands the City of Toronto resides. I appear before you as a first-generation Canadian, the daughter and the proud granddaughter of my Oma and Opa, who were part of the Dutch resistance in World War II. What I am sharing with you is what I have learned from Harry and his people. I hope I do honor to my teachers and justice to what they have tried to teach me. Now, we're not in front of City Hall today. It is raining. And in the Indigenous culture, rain is purifying and it is healing. So I think it is apt. But however, in Nathan Phillips Square, there is a tourist magnet. It is the medicine wheel. And the medicine wheel displays 4 colors that represent the 4 Indigenous the 4 directions and the 4 races of humankind that were placed on earth by the Creator. The distinct races of humankind were gifted by the Creator with special knowledge and wisdom to be used for their benefit and for the benefit and shared for those others on Mother Earth. The 7 sacred teachings were given to us so that we may learn to live and move forward together in a good way. They are love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. And they are values that I believe are shared with Canadians and values that we need to return to. Indigenous people, and this is important, we need to push back the false narratives that are emanating from our campuses. Indigenous people welcomed the settlers to North America. Our original relationship was based upon mutual respect, honor, equality, peaceful coexistence, and the sharing of the land, its wisdom, its blessings, and its resources. Treaties of peace and friendship were signed that codified these intentions and stressed the original relationship of peace, peaceful coexistence, equality, and respect. Tragically, in the mid-1800s, Canada ignored the treaties and abandoned the original relationship. It developed policies and laws that disenfranchised, oppressed, and marginalized Indigenous people, as exemplified by the Indian residential school system. In 1910, Deputy Superintendent General of the Department of Indian Affairs, Duncan Campbell Scott, responding to the appalling high death rate of Indigenous children in the Indian residential schools, stated, and I quote, "This alone does not justify a change in the policy of the department which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem." Today, the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, there are signs and chants that include, "There is only one solution, Intifada revolution." The phrase Canada used in the 1910s and the Nazis in World War II has been cleverly adapted and callously adopted. Any Indigenous person and non-Indigenous Canadian aware of our shared history should shudder to hear it chanted on our streets and in our communities. As Anishnaabe, the term in all of its iterations is offensive, hateful, and racist. It takes us back to the dark chapter of our shared history marked by the deaths of more than 6,000 Indigenous children. It reminds us of the tragic loss of 6 million Jews across Europe during and in the period leading up to the Holocaust. These calls for death of Jewish people are unequivocally anathema to the 7 sacred teachings. Now, on November 7th, Harry and I were privileged to be the part of the Spirit of Hope Gala hosted by the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal. A powerful gathering of diverse communities brought together by their shared humanity, commitment to democratic social values, and opposition to Jew hatred and hatred in all of its manifestations. We left the event infused with hope and inspired by our fellow Canadians. And then came Amsterdam. Man's inhumanity to man on full display in Amsterdam. Amsterdam rendered our night sleepless and our morning horrifying. Amsterdam revealed the falsity of assertions that intifada revolution are benign or peaceful calls for change. Hamas publicly committed to repeat October 7th over and over and over again. In Amsterdam, this hateful promise was kept, and the terrorist promise is playing out on our streets and in our communities in Canada. I'm going to repeat this. Europeans on our shores, and I'm speaking for my husband, whose values I share, were welcomed to North America. Treaties of peace and friendship reflected this truth, and they are in effect today. They apply to all of us, including those demonstrators and those TikTok keyboard warriors in campuses. They apply to all of us and govern the relationships we have with each other. As Anishnaabe, my Harry asserts that reconciliation is the return to the original intention of the treaties and the restoration of the original relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous in Canada. We are all treaty partners and signatories to the treaties of peace and friendship. The values embodied in the treaties, which are the values of the 7 sacred teachings, are consistent with the values that I believe are held by Canadians. Now, some have suggested correlations between Hamas and Israel in the Middle East and the reconciliation work led by First Nations here in Canada. We hear the word colonizer, settler, and decolonize to justify terror, violence, kidnapping, rape, targeted civilian massacres. These words are used to assert revolutionary violence by any means necessary and that all forms of resistance are justified. Harry and I unequivocally reject these assertions and any allyship with those who hold such views. Those values are anathema to the sacred teachings. If Harry were here, he would say our land, the treaties, our values, and our hospitality are being abused by and pirated by treaty scofflaws. Assertions of allyship within Anishinaabe and Indigenous people were revealed as lies by the September 18th hijacking of the TDSB Grassy Narrows field trip by anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian demonstrators. The gall to take this tragic piece of Indigenous suffering and treat it as irrelevant except to use it for someone else's dogma is evil beyond words. And to use youthful students, children, is unforgivable. The first time we saw ideologically driven abuse of children in Canada was when Indigenous children were used to destroy the culture, the way of life, and the very existence of Indigenous people. Our children were stolen from us, just as the children of Israel were stolen from us on October 7th. So too were our children. Our children were placed in institutions of abomination, Indian residential schools, to remove them from the influence of the Wigwam and to kill the Indian and the child. The last Indian residential school closed in 1996. The devastation and trauma they caused continues to this day, and we hear and are hearing the hateful language that emanated from those schools in Canada today. Fast forward to September 18th. For several hours, Canadian children were removed from the care of their parents and used once again to promote demagoguery, and this time to advance the ideology of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian demonstrators. What a shot across the bow. What a warning to Toronto parents from sinister elements within this movement. We can access your children, and you're helpless to prevent it. And now, while we speak about children, just on a personal note, in our home, in accordance with our spiritual beliefs, we pray for the safe return of the hostages. And we pray that the prophetic assurances that Hashem, the Creator, gave in response to the weeping and lamentations of Rachel through the prophet of Jeremiah are come true again, and that the children of Israel will return from the land of the enemy. And to the young TDSB students who came home with the label of settler, colonizer, stickers that said that Zionism kills, Harry and I say you are our welcomed and much-loved treaty partners. And shame, shame, shame on abusing our children. Now, Anishnaabe are community and relationship-oriented. Exclusion, bigotry, harassment, anti-Semitism, lawlessness, and hate are being permitted on and throughout our treaty lands, all of which is contrary to the 7 sacred teachings, the rule of law in Canada, and the values we share in common with Canadians. Now, Lieutenant John McCrae, in the last verse of his poem in Flanders Fields, exhorts us to take up the quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. Remember, too, the conversation between Frodo and Gandalf in J.R.R. Tolkien's book, The Fellowship of the Ring. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Dr. Martin Luther King tells us that time is always ripe to do right. And he noted that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. On the eve of Remembrance Day, our shared humanity and love of this land must unite us. We must take and hold high the torch. We must use the time given to us wisely to do what is right and help bend that moral arc of the universe ever towards justice. And we must stand together to protect Anishinaabe and Canadian values that are threatened by the surge of hate and anti-Semitism. We owe it to the 7 generations who came before it. We owe it to the 7 generations who come after us. It is a moral imperative. It is our duties as citizens of this beautiful land. Shalom, Miigwech, Shalom, Am Israel Chai.